So if you're anything like me, watching WandaVision probably made your brain feel like this. You see, after topping the box office with Endgame and taking a much-needed break, Marvel started coming back by releasing a few shows that seemed like they would focus less on giant world-ending events and more on fleshing out specific characters. The first among these was none other than WandaVision, and for a minute there, this show gave the impression that it was going to be a creative exploration of two characters that never got a ton of screen time in the movies. But unfortunately, WandaVision ended up being a confusing, baffling mess that seems to only exist to get people to subscribe to Disney+. In fact, this show took a character that I thought was pretty cool and wanted to know more about, and actually made me never want to see or hear from her again. All in all, it was pretty disappointing, and I want to talk about it. So, I guess I'll start with the basics. Part 1, the plot. Basically, the whole premise of this show is that after Wanda Squeeze got killed by Thanos, she got real depressed and created her very own sitcom fantasy life right in the middle of a small town. Which included brainwashing all the people who live there, by the way.
If you won't let us go, just let us die.
But don't worry, I'll get more into that later. Anyway, beyond this initial premise, the main plot of the show rests on two villains. An evil government man and a hocus pocus reject. And neither of their plans makes any sense whatsoever. Let's start with this asshole.
If only you had a little more vision.
After the outside world learns about Wanda's reality warping bubble, a new organization named SWORD shows up to try to stop it. We spent some time with this group as they investigate the anomaly, and there's ultimately some disagreement on how to deal with the whole situation. Tyler Hayward, the director of SWORD, sees Wanda as a massively powerful threat that needs to be eliminated before further damage is caused, while an agent named Monica Rambeau thinks that they should try to talk to Wanda and de-escalate the situation peacefully. But wouldn't you know it, the guy that's acting like an aggressive asshole pretty much from the start turns out to be a bad guy.
What a twist!
And his goal really isn't to save the town, but rather to pin his own illegal activities on Wanda, then take her out. What kind of illegal activities, you ask? Well, it turns out that after the events of Infinity War, Vision's body has somehow been obtained by this SWORD organization, and Hayward's goal is to get Vision back online and under his control. However, it's established in a throwaway line of dialogue that reactivating Vision is illegal. But, being that Wanda just so happens to have conjured up a weird version of Vision for her fantasy world, Hayward's big evil plan is just to resurrect Vision anyway and then blame it on Wanda. Now, while that idea might not seem so bad at first, if you pay attention to what happens in this show a little bit more thoroughly than not at all, you'll see how stupid and broken it all is. To start, the audience is just forced to accept a weird status quo that we never get an explanation for. And that is the fact that SWORD even has Vision's body to begin with. You're telling me that in the 5 years between Infinity War and Endgame, the Avengers did absolutely nothing with Vision's body? I mean, come on, it was right there. You would think that Tony would try to bring him back to life at some point. Or maybe the Wakandans. Or shit, at the very least, the Avengers could have given him a proper funeral. But no, I guess they just dropped him off at the nearest Best Buy. As if that wasn't bad enough, though, the timing of how Hayward's plan unfolds is completely fucked. You see, Hayward only gets Vision's body powered back up by using some of Wanda's energy that was left over on a drone that she destroyed. I'm not sure why her energy remains on certain objects now, but whatever. The point is, up until that discovery, Hayward couldn't seem to figure out any other way to power up his albino robot.
Tried every type of power supply under the sun, when all we needed was a little energy directly from the source.
Yet, in the flashbacks we're shown, he seems to already be operating under the assumption that Wanda is the key to bringing Vision back to life.
Not everyone has the kind of power that could bring their soulmate back online.
I mean, why else would he insist on showing her how Vision was being torn apart? Just to be a dick? No, I'm afraid that Hayward was just trying to coax Wanda into reviving Vision here, even though he has no logical reason to think she has that capability. In fact, before all the Hex bullshit, all Wanda ever did was move some stuff with her mind and give people nightmares. Even if Hayward somehow knew that Wanda was able to resurrect Vision though, why not just play the manipulation card a little harder? He could have come up with some story about how they need to bring Vision back for some noble cause, and that might have been enough to get Wanda to go through with it. Alternatively, he could have just gotten her to attack something with her energy when she visited the complex, and use that to resurrect Vision. But nah, fuck those ideas. Something like that would make too much sense. Let's just have Hayward stumble upon the very thing he needs for his entire plan to happen. Perfect. Anyway, putting all that aside, there's another big issue with Hayward's plan that really bugs the shit out of me. Now you really gotta sit and think about this one. If Hayward's organization isn't allowed to legally resurrect Vision, why does he think he'll be able to keep Vision under Sword's control as a glorified drone if Wanda is the one that takes the fall for it? You see, the way Hayward goes about all this implies that Sword was given some type of special permission just to study Vision. And due to that limitation, his plan was to say that Wanda stole Vision's body and reanimated it. You know, so his organization wouldn't be blamed. Although, even if Hayward successfully powered up his titanium white Vision and convincingly blamed it on Wanda, that doesn't mean Sword just gets to keep him by default. For example, if there was an international law that said no one was allowed to build a specific nuclear bomb, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be able to just say someone else built it, kill them, and then keep it for yourself with no questions asked. So in the simplest of terms, this guy's entire plan is a big old pile of trash. And I'm afraid that the other villain plot isn't much better.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
As the stupid plot with Vision unfolds, Wanda's fantasy world continues to get stranger and stranger. And eventually it's revealed that some old hag named Agatha Harkness has been attempting to steal Wanda's powers all along. Now I'm not sure, but from what I gather, Agatha witnesses Wanda's reality-bending fantasy and is so impressed with all those mad skills on display that she wants to steal Wanda's powers for herself. To put it simply, Agatha is basically a power drain enemy from a video game. The more you attack her, the more life force she can take from you. Yet for some reason, Agatha plays along in Wanda's TV show for a while, and continually tries to break the illusion to ease Wanda out of it. We find out that she was controlling Wanda's fake brother, manipulating Vision, making the neighbors act all weird, and she even killed the dog too. Although all this begs the question, if Agatha just wanted to drain Wanda's powers, which is ultimately what she tries to do, how did any of these actions really further that goal? I mean, if the end result is just gonna be a big CGI fight in the sky, why not just confront Wanda directly right from the start? She seems to respond pretty forcefully to people who simply ask the wrong questions, so why are you jumping through all these fucking hoops? The only explanation we get is that Agatha was trying to figure out how Wanda got to be so powerful in the first place. This culminates in Agatha taking Wanda on a trip down memory lane, and the conclusion of that is that Wanda is some super witch that was prophesized in the Evil Dead book.
This is chaos magic, Wanda. And that makes you the Scarlet Witch.
I guess Agatha confirmed this by seeing that Wanda got really sad and unleashed her inner power, but so what? Wanda already explained that to her through the fake Pietro earlier. And you would think that seeing the end result on display would be all the proof she needs. It's kinda like seeing ice, and needing to go back in time to visually confirm how it got like that. Anyway, because Agatha does all this unnecessary shit, and unloads some exposition about runes or whatever, Wanda is actually able to use that against her to ultimately win the day.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
As you can see, not much care was put into the plot that underpins the entire show. And unfortunately, the same goes for the characters. Which brings me to Part 2, Wanda and Vision. Continuing the shitfest, this show makes absolutely baffling decisions with its two main characters, with one doing the story equivalent of this,
Shit.
and the other being turned into a horrible, selfish asshole. But for the sake of organization, let's start with Vision. So contrary to what the title suggests, this story really isn't about two characters at all. It's mainly about Wanda, and Vision is just a means to an end, whose overall involvement is basically just one big convoluted excuse to bring him back to life. You see, being that the Vision we see in Wanda's sitcom is just a weird manifestation of the real thing, he doesn't remember anything before Westview, and he spends most of the show just wanting to know what the fuck is going on. Eventually, he is told about past events, but things get weird when he encounters his original body. After having a little philosophical discussion, he learns that the reprogrammed version that Hayward brought back doesn't remember anything either. In response, the fake sitcom Vision is somehow able to unlock the original body's memories. I have no clue how this works, and I'm not even going to try to figure it out. But whatever. For all intents and purposes, Vision is back in the MCU now. Although, what's super weird is that as soon as this happens, he just flies away. You know, while there's still a witch and a bunch of soldiers trying to kill Wanda. Not only does this completely betray everything we know about this character, but it's such a strange way to end this little arc, if you can even call it that. I mean, Vision doesn't really grow or change at all. He's more so just brought back to exactly where he was at the end of Infinity War, making everything that happened with him here utterly pointless. Although, I guess I prefer that to what they did to Wanda.
You can't control me the way you do them.
Can't I?
Bitch, are you for real?
So by far, the biggest casualty of WandaVision is ironically Wanda herself. But before we can really dive into that, we have to first address an underlying issue with the entire show. And that is that the stakes just aren't clear. To start, I still don't understand how anything works with Wanda's bubble, the things in it, or her powers in general. For the most part, it seems like anything that crosses the border is simply transformed to match the look of Wanda's show. The hazmat guy becomes a beekeeper, the sword agents get turned into clowns, Monica's space rover gets turned into a truck, etc. However, when the story calls for it, some people barely change at all. Others gain insane superpowers out of nowhere, and certain objects look different in Wanda's sitcom for seemingly no reason other than cheap intrigue in the early episodes. In other words, this bubble, and Wanda's abilities, are the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free cards for lazy writing, because they allow for pretty much anything to happen with zero explanation as to how or why. As a result, I have no idea what the stakes of any given situation really are, especially when it comes to moments that I'm supposed to take seriously. For instance, what are the stakes in the scene when Hayward tries to shoot Wanda's kids? To the best available evidence, these little assholes aren't even real. They age up like every 3 seconds, and it seems like they're just another illusion that Wanda could rebuild at will. They also have insane superpowers themselves that I'm pretty sure could save them from this very situation. So what am I supposed to be feeling here exactly?
Fuck if I know.
This clear lack of any consequence rests at the very heart of what's wrong with Wanda's entire character arc. You see, when you get right down to it, this is intended to be a very personal story about Wanda that centers around her sacrificing her own happiness for the good of others. After creating a fantasy world where she has everything she's ever wanted, Wanda is faced with a choice. Either stay in the fantasy at the cost of the thousands of innocent people who she's forcing to play along, or give up the dream life she's created for herself because it is in fact hurting other people. However, there is absolutely no explanation given as to why these two options are mutually exclusive. It's never established that Wanda actually needs the innocent people to participate in all this. We're never told that she's draining the town's life force to sustain her family or anything like that. The most we're told is that her family is simply tied to the world she made, and she just so happened to have made that world with a bunch of people around. In other words, Wanda seems to have the ability to conjure up her fake family at will in any location, and it doesn't require anything but some effort on her part. At least, it seems to work that way, because in the last episode, she lets all the townspeople go and her fake family is just fine. Although, even if it was established that she actually needs the townspeople, it's still such a creepy and invasive thing to do that makes me find her despicable anyway. This character has had a number of experiences so far that should have taught her just how dangerous her powers can be if she's not careful with them. So seeing her treat people like this just seems like several steps backwards no matter how you slice it. What makes it even worse though is that the show plays fast and loose with whether or not Wanda is even truly aware of the shit she's doing. Early on, we're told that friends and relatives of the people inside the bubble have had their memories erased, so they won't come looking for their loved ones. And throughout the show, Wanda also corrects situations when they break away from how she wants them to go. But someone in the writer's room must have realized that their protagonist was acting like a horrible asshole, because they also shoehorned in little bits of dialogue and details that say that Wanda is just as confused about all this as we are.
Why? Tell me
Do
why.
you really think that I am controlling everything?
The fact that this shit is so all over the place just makes Wanda seem like a crazy dickhead either way. And I guess that would have been okay if the whole point of the story was showing her turn to the dark side, but it clearly wasn't. Wanda is very much painted as the one we're supposed to be rooting for here. And again, the big emotional payoff centers around her deciding to give up her family because she suddenly feels it's the right thing to do. Although, quite frankly, I don't understand what's so significant about Wanda giving up her fake family anyway. Vision is basically back now, and again, it seems like Wanda could just go to some other remote location and live her life the way she wanted to anyway. You know, without mind raping a bunch of innocent people. So after all this drama, Wanda really didn't learn or give up anything. In fact, she was just rewarded for really awful behavior. She became more powerful, got a cool new costume, got Vision back, and faced absolutely no consequences for the things she did or the people she hurt. Shit, even other characters give her a pat on the back for her noble sacrifice.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
It wouldn't change how they see me.
Are you serious?
When you cut through all the bullshit though, this script simply did not get the care and attention it needed for a story like this to really work. Instead, we got a weird mishmash of ideas that conflicted with each other from start to finish, and characters who seem to contradict themselves at almost every turn. But beyond having a plot that makes no sense, and characters that make me want to dive into a wood chipper, I think there is something much more sinister at play here, and it poses a cynical question. Part 3. Do you believe in the magic of audience manipulation? As far as I'm concerned, I think WandaVision felt like such a huge waste of time because on some level it was kinda designed to be. You see, we didn't learn anything substantial about Wanda, or dive deep into her character at all. By the end, all I learned is that she was really into sitcoms growing up and she's apparently some super witch now. Got it. Did we really need a whole show to tell us one good scene's worth of information? I don't think so. No, I'm afraid the goal here was simply to create traffic on Disney Plus for a few weeks until the next show got farted out. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand that that's essentially the business model here, but is it too much to ask these shows actually make sense and provide some quality entertainment along the way? I mean, shit, this show didn't even do anything to progress the MCU any further. For example, I think everyone was intrigued when they saw Evan Peters show up as Quicksilver again. With the talk of rewriting reality and how this show is going to introduce the whole multiverse thing, it was only natural for fans to speculate that characters like the X-Men would start creeping their way in. However, what I never would have guessed is that this cameo would result in little more than a dick joke.
You're Ralph Boner?
You see, this is what I mean by manipulating the audience. When we were first left on that cliffhanger, it created a lot of intrigue, as it seemingly opened up a whole new concept to explore in the MCU. But unfortunately, one of the most interesting things about the show was just laughed off.
Boner.
It's not even like they kept the door open for the possibility or anything. Stuff like this just pisses me off, because this actor is only important to us. And why include him in a reality-bending story if you're not going to do anything with the idea whatsoever? It's like if they had Hugh Jackman show up, and he had claws and he could heal fast, but he was really just a guy, and his name ended up being Ben Dover. In conclusion, I'm starting to get really disillusioned with Marvel. For years, they focused on telling simple yet well-constructed stories that slowly built up into one awesome universe. Sure, there was the occasional stinker or bad choice in there, but overall they maintained a certain level of quality, and there's a good reason why they're currently sitting pretty at the top of the entertainment landscape. However, I feel that as of the past few years, they've been getting really complacent, relying more and more on fan service, hot-button political topics, and brand recognition rather than focusing on the character and story stuff that got them where they are. Long story short, I don't predict good things for the MCU if they continue to pump out such incoherent sludge. But as I finish this review, it seems like that'll be the new strategy going forward. Anyway, until next time.
Adieu, auf Wiedersehen, Gesundheit, farewell.